Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. Boy, am I glad to be able to say that after the events that have just transpired. I'm here with, as always, my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, first of all, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for you guys for holding on just that little bit longer. Dan was obviously at the game again, which we'll get into in a second, but we've had a few little technical hitches once he's gotten back. So I'm sorry to you guys that it's coming a little bit later than normal, but I know all of you guys must have been sat around waiting for it. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Dan, I'm sure you're the same, mate. But enough on everything that's gone wrong because we could talk about it all day, mate. Let's get into the good stuff. Tell me about your day again.
Well, do you know what, Dan? I was saving this for the podcast. You don't know how much I've actually wanted to tell you this, but Emmy Martinez, fan of the Villa Filler podcast. He's not actually. I spoke to him on my way out. I saw him.
Oh, no way.
I said hi. I said well played and that, and he was very nice. So maybe
nice.
potential fan of the Villa Filler podcast.
The seed has been planted.
You don't mention it on the first date. You don't let the girl you're seeing or the guy know that you're a massive Star Wars nerd. I told Charlotte found out when it was too late for her to back out, basically. So that's the plan with Emmy. We'll let him know after a few more little meet and greets. Maybe get him on the podcast if that's possible. But Dan, Aston Villa 1, Arsenal 0. Now, I mean, Ollie Watkins scoring within the second minute. He's scored 3 back-to-back goals for Aston Villa. He's the first striker to do that since Darren Bent in 2012, I believe. Scored his 10th Premier League goal of the season so far. And boy, was it a good one.
Yes, wow, mate, wow. It came, it was really important with, you watched Arsenal, and this was all they spoke about in the build-up, obviously being at the ground, obviously in your privileged position, you wouldn't have seen this. But it was all they spoke in the warm-up about how Arsenal had come into the game, the Wolves game this is, on a 7-match unbeaten run. They'd won 5 of those, drawn 2. They ended up conceding as many goals in that eventual 2-1 defeat to Wolves as they had in those 7 games. So they had this watertight defence. They were playing really good football. But what they said is that before it all went wrong for Arsenal and they had those 2 red cards, the opening half an hour, they actually played really well. And they started well. They could have scored a few goals of their own. And ultimately, had they not had those 2 red cards, they probably would have gone on to go the game, to win the game. So we knew Arsenal were going to come at this game red hot. But for Villa to come into that and put to bed our own poor run of form and the poor starts that we've seen in that game, after just 74 seconds, that's the fastest goal that Arsenal have conceded this season, was great. And it's a brilliant finish from Bertrand Traoré. It's a brilliant finish from Ollie Watkins, but what I was going to say is that it's made by Bertrand Traoré, Dan, and that endeavour and that work rate, which has been a criticism of his by Villa fans for more than a few weeks, hasn't it now? In recent times, Villa fans saying that he doesn't work hard enough. Hopefully those kind of plays will start to put those sort of predispositions to bed, because I'm not too sure if I agree with them.
Nah, I mean, Bertrand was vital there to Villa getting the lead, and didn't last the whole game, which I'm sure we'll get onto a bit later, Dan. But having that extra, the willing runner who's going to pick up on that back pass, I think a criticism that has come of Ross Barkley recently is he hasn't been hot on the defence. He's not necessarily picking up on them kind of misplaced passes, really putting himself about and getting the ball. Bertrand did that. It was a brilliant goal. Matt Ryan's first touch of the ball as an Arsenal player was picking the ball up out of the back of his own net. So that tells you everything you need to know. And the one goal was enough, Dan, for the rest of the first half. I feel like we really nullified Arsenal extremely well. We restricted them to only set plays in the form of free kicks, in the form of corners. They didn't really. I think they only had 1 shot on goal in the first half from open play, which was from Nicola Pepe, which flew straight into the whole end. Thankfully for us. One thing I noticed, Dan, Saka absolutely got the Grealish treatment today, didn't he? Every opportunity a Villa player got, he got brought down with no mercy shown whatsoever.
Yeah, they gave him, it was one of those where there was that incident with Ezri where it looked like he was potentially through on goal. It looked like a fair tackle at first on first viewing, but when they showed the replays a little bit closer up, it was, perhaps a bit more questionable. But, that ultimately, I think Grealish still got the Grealish treatment for what it's worth. It's not like all of the game's fouls were transferred there onto Saka. Like Grealish still got a lot, but Saka is a real problem. and he's a great player. I was reminded in the broadcast that he's only 19, which is
Wow.
crazy, isn't it? You know, he can have another 2 years of club football under his belt and still only be 21. The talent that boy has, I absolutely love. I love his versatility, and yeah, you have to nullify him somehow, and that seems to be the way that other teams have tried to nullify Jack for a good couple of seasons now. But it wasn't just Saka that we did a good job of keeping a lid on. I thought Nicola Pepe, who you mentioned, he's been in a real rich vein of form recently. He's starting to finally look like he's the player that price tag on his performances in France have led us to believe that he can be. You know, he scored in 3 straight away games before the fact he came to Villa Park. He was actually looking to be the first Arsenal player to score in 4 consecutive away games since Giroud in 2015. And the reason that he didn't manage to achieve that feat is simply Matty Cash, who I thought did a brilliant job of putting a lid on him today and really stopping him becoming the threat and becoming the danger that he was for Wolves. And we saw the goal that he scored against Wolves and what a great goal it was, coming inside, making a mockery of a couple of defenders and bending one past the goalkeeper. Matty Cash didn't give him an inch. I don't think I thought, you know, with so much praise going to the other lads who will come on to, like Mings, etc. Matty Cash's game went under the radar today. Certainly on a defensive end, you know, it wasn't his best game going forward, Matty Cash, but that is perfectly okay when you consider the job he did on Nicola Pepe.
Absolutely, and there were times certainly in the second half where Arsenal, I think, to be fair, the right-hand side, Matty Cash's side, is Villa's most vulnerable. If you're going to attack, you're gonna want to go down that side. And Arsenal overloaded that side often with Saka, with Willian when he came on, with Aubameyang, with Pepe. So he had a lot to deal with, and the team did, and they honestly dealt with it so well. In the first half, Dan, and for push to the second half as well, Villa were happy to concede possession in order to stay solid, pick the counter-attacks wisely. It's becoming a staple of this Dean Smith formation, especially when you're playing at home. Villa had about 33% of the ball, I believe, Dan, today, which doesn't surprise me one bit. But given how clinical we were able to be, and we picked our counter-attacks well, I think we did okay on set pieces when we had them. I think we only had 3 corners in the game. But it was an effective performance from Dean Smith's men, and it's difficult to pick a particular standout. I think Ollie Watkins, of course, still in the headlines, getting the goal. That's really important. But I thought Jack had a really good game. He had a tough task as well because Bellerin was extremely physical with him today, and there was countless times where both Bellerin and Pepe, or whoever managed to be on the right hand side, they would double up on Jack, and it often left Target in open space as well. I didn't think Target had as much time on the ball today. He didn't. I think that's just because of how we effectively played. We didn't really want to attack too much, but there was always that option when Jack was getting manhandled. You saw Jack try and play in Target, and him trying to get the balls into the box, which against a very suspect back to pairing of Rob Holden and Gabriel. It's a shame that nothing more really came of that.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I think it was. I don't think there was ever a real fluidity to the game. I think both sides and their overly physical natures meant that there were a lot of fouls. Play was broken up. I didn't think Villa, and this won't have contributed to that possession stat that you mentioned, I don't think we retained the ball particularly well, especially in the first half. I thought it all seemed a bit too frantic, a bit haphazard, and perhaps when you're so aware of tackles flying in and stuff like that, it does induce that kind of football. Maybe that contributed to that, but you know, it wasn't. We looked for all of the, not the issues that we had in midfield, but those sort of the little sloppiness in possession and the fact that players weren't getting as much time on the ball. Both sides were very eager to press and stuff like that. I thought we did a really good job of defensively of keeping a lid on things. You know, Ezri made 7 clearances alone in the first half. You saw Emmy make some brilliant saves from the free kick, especially from that free kick from Xhaka.
Yeah.
What a save that was. But I don't know if you saw it, there was The Athletic that ran a story saying that after the West Ham game, Emmy was so disappointed that in training sessions following that game, he asked the forwards to stay out with him after training to get shots in, just to make sure that those errors that he made didn't happen again. And he deserved the game that he had today. And one of the things that I didn't actually mention is that the goal was largely induced because of a pass that Emmy plays. You know, because if you remember in the sequence, John tried to play a ball in behind which got headed away by Gabriel, I believe. But before all of that, there's a brilliant outball from Emmy to Bertrand Traore, who played a really nice little touch into McGinn. And those kind of passes that we're seeing, Emmy, that crossbow like right foot that he has, we're seeing it all the more. And he always seems to play against Arsenal like he's got a real point to prove, and rightly so. And with the beneficiaries of that, I suppose it was another good game from Emmy. He made some really, really good saves today. But so did Matt Ryan. You know, unfortunately, he didn't get off to a good start, but you have to credit for Arsenal's keeper for making some really good saves. And I thought both sides defended quite well on the whole. There weren't really too many clear-cut chances for either side. But no, it's Ollie Watkins again in those areas that we talk about, mate. You give him the ball, he's going to be clinical, and he was the only player that managed to take advantage of that all game.
So Dan, coming into the second half, I actually felt that Villa really attacked the game for the opening kind of 10-15 minutes. Ollie Watkins must have had about 3 or 4 shots on goal during that period of time. Villa looked to really try and dominate that game. We couldn't quite get the second goal that I think Villa, obviously they didn't need, but at the time when you're watching this, you're thinking, oh my God, we need to try and extend this lead because Arsenal are going to come back into this game eventually. After that, there was a few changes. Arteta brought on Aubameyang, took off Lacazette. He brought on Martin Odegaard. He also brought on Willian, and we saw a disciplined side to Villa that I think it's fair to say we haven't seen a much more disciplined 45 minutes of football than we did today, Dan.
Yeah, the second half was big, and especially when you consider we've had 6 games in 18 days, it makes it all the more impressive, doesn't it, to have those stamina levels to go right until the very end. I think the substitutions from Dean interested me at first because I was sat there wanting Douglas Luiz or Sanson just to come on and give us a little bit of more control in that midfield, because it felt at one point like it was slipping away from us a little bit, and I was having flashbacks of the Southampton game, of the Burnley game, where it's like, right, you know, if we don't get a grip of this midfield specifically, we're just waiting for a goal. And Dean made the choice to bring on Jacob Ramsey for Barkley, and if it was me, I would have been bringing on Douglas in that situation. But Dean knows best, right? And it paid off in the end. I thought Trezeguet did a really good job down that right-hand side, just bringing that energy and that tenacity to the games that ultimately kept him in the squad to start with. And, you know, it's still a player. It's great that we've got a player like Trezeguet to come on and to bring on in games who can probably pretty aggrieved that he's not starting games because he never put a foot wrong. It was just unlucky he got the injury when he did. And it's meant that he's missed out on these games. But we really battled right until the end there. And but we've now given Arsenal 3 consecutive defeats, which is nice. And that's the first time that we've done that without them scoring a goal since 1922. Jeez. So this is no mean feat by the Villa to lock Arsenal out like we've done in now 270 minutes of football. Reads really nicely, mate. And that back line, it was really nice to see Tyrone get man of the match again. Sorry for all you guys and those agendas that you've got, but today just didn't fit them. Ty was an absolute colossus in that back line. And it's testament to those guys, to Emmy, and to work that the boys are doing back there, because to be able to grind out games like this is an important facet to have.
Absolutely. And I felt like today the defence was actually afforded a lot more cover. Marv played really well in the midfield. McGinn seemed more like his normal self, which was good. Didn't necessarily see as many of the long breaking runs forward, but he was certainly heavy in the tackle, did all the basics right in terms of the defensive, which is all you can really ask for. Ross Barkley, I think the jury's still out on his performance. It made sense to bring him off. I actually felt like Dean was kind of making a statement, bringing on Ramsey in that situation. But to be fair to Ramsey, he came on, he did exactly what he needed to do. Out of possession, the 4-2-3-1 becomes a 4-4-2. You saw Jacob Ramsey trying to pressurise the defenders as essentially a second striker when we were out of possession. Was nice on the ball, had a nice little ball roll, had a shot on goal, which Ryan saved, which is good to see that he's got the confidence to be able to do that, Dan. In a situation like you said, maybe Sanson could have come on, maybe Douglas Luiz. I think Dean probably trusted Jacob a bit more just because he understands he knows the formation, he knows the system, he knows the role. The game was still pretty much on a knife's edge. Arsenal could have scored at any point. They peppered that left-hand side, as I said. Emmy made some brilliant saves. There was Pepe managed to work his way into the box and get a shot through Cash's or Concer's legs, I believe, which he reacted to and saved amazingly at his near post. So by no means was the game dead and buried. It was a very risky move putting Jacob in the game, but I think it would have been equally, if not more of a risk to introduce Morgan. But it kind of begs the question, when are we going to see him? I really want to see him. Hopefully he makes a cameo at Brighton. I think it's good to see that Dean actually freshened things up. A lot of people were certainly panicking when they saw there was no Douglas and that Marv was going in. But as Dean rightfully said in his press conference, which I actually got to ask a question today, and this is the answer that he gave me, is that Marv's played 3 times now and we've kept 3 clean sheets. Can't argue with the stats there. That's 3 games, 3 clean sheets, 3 wins with Marv starting. So that's really good news for Marv, for Dean, for the team. It's just having them options is what's really important, and keep reiterating that point. But never in a month of Sundays would you think, right, okay, we need to rest Douglas Luiz in any game at any point because he's so vital to the way we play. But I think just given how this game went, how it was really kind of backs against the wall for a lot of the time, it lent itself to Marv coming in, and I think he was walking on eggshells for the majority of the second half because of that yellow card. But we saw him go toe-to-toe with the likes of Thomas Partey and outstrength him, beat him in the tackle, which for me is absolutely huge because Partey is one of, if not the better midfielders in the whole of Europe for what he does in this, almost Douglas Luiz role. I guess he's not your classic destroyer like his stature may say. He's actually quite silky on the ball, which was actually good to see in real life today. I felt quite lucky to see that. He's a much better player than a lot of people actually end up giving him credit for. But again, Dan, it was such a good performance from the team. It really was. Again, no XG here from me today. I'm going in blind without any stats because of the absolute farce we've had trying to get all this sorted, mate. But there's plenty of positives to take from this. Now we've got a week's break. We've got Brighton up next away. Brighton, they're kind of hit and miss at the moment, Dan, aren't they? They're playing well. They're just not quite getting the points that maybe, dare I refer to the XG. The XG certainly says they deserve.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, mate. There's plenty of positives, and we go into that game really fancying ourselves, I think it must be said. Just before we leave the game, really interesting point that you made about sort of Douglas, because the first, in all my notes that I have about today, I've got about 8 on Villa before the game, about 8 on Arsenal before the game. And then I always do a section on when I see the lineups. And the first thing I've got is Douglas Luiz, question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark. Thomas Partey, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Because I was like, oh my God, we've just seen in previous games the midfield just get completely outwashed. Just like by physical, and say what you want about Xhaka and Partey, but you're not going to find many midfield pairings that match those two for physicality. Just brutes in there at times. And I was like, oh my God, we've put poor Marv and poor John McGinn like in this 2-man midfield against this pair, like it's going to be a massacre. But they really stood up to it. I mean, you've got all that physicality out there, but Marv made more tackles than any other player out on that pitch today. So hats off to you, Marvellous Nakamba. You're the unsung hero of the day for sure. But other positives going to that Brighton game, Dan. I feel like every Villa stat gets backed up by that 09-10 season, but I've got another one hit for you today. This is the first time that Aston Villa have had a player in double digits, 1 for goals and 1 for assists since 9-10. Now that OLLIE Watkins has his 10th for the season, really nice to see him up into double digits. No player, this is an interesting stat, Dan, and this backs up what we've been saying about giving him chances in that role that he likes to play in and around the 6-yard box. No player in the last 6 game weeks have had more shots from inside the penalty area than OLLIE Watkins has. And he's, I think, behind Harry Kane, the striker in the league who is performing closest to his expected goals. So shout out to OLLIE again, absolutely massive performance. But no, just before... Oh yeah, Brighton, interesting team, isn't it, Dan? One that they played Burnley earlier and they got a draw. Before that, they'd obviously kind of got that win at Anfield, and they're a real topsy-turvy team. But they've beaten Spurs recently, beaten Liverpool, but they've also drawn to Fulham, drawn with Burnley today. And so you really don't know which Brighton you're going to get. Hopefully, I think we're going to see 2 sides that really want to go and play some good football. So at least on an aesthetic level, it should be a good game to watch.
Absolutely. They've got a system where There's a heavy emphasis from playing out from the back. They've got this back three. It's a very good brand of football that Graham Potter plays. We're well aware they beat us at Villa Park last time round, so Villa will absolutely be looking for revenge for 3 points. Villa currently sit 8th in the table, I do believe, Dan. Obviously, doing the double on Arsenal, it was big that we managed to get the win today to keep that gap, as to what it is. Because I think if they won, they would have actually maybe gone ahead of us by a point, which is not what you want at all. Especially, as we're saying, we're trying to qualify for Europa League. That is the hopes. So you just got to try and win as many games, keep yourself in for contention. We're still very much in for it, Dan. And Brighton will propose a completely different challenge to what Arsenal have. So looking forward to that, Dan. It's going to be an interesting one. But after today, I feel a lot better because Arsenal, for me, West Ham had the game plan down to a T. It was there right in front of you. All Arteta needed to do was get his players to replicate the West Ham performance. I was expecting to see Partey running off the shoulder or Xhaka running off the shoulder of the defence, similarly to how Souček did to get his goals. That's how you're going to break Villa down today. You're going to keep putting balls into the box. Mings and Ezri are going to eat them up all day long. So I think Brighton, they will approach this game in a much different way. I expect it to be difficult, but as you say, Dan, I think it's going to be a very nice game of football to watch, especially for the neutrals. But I think that's a good note to end the podcast on, Dan, because it's taken us long enough to record this and try and sort this. I've got a new laptop. We've had all kinds of issues in terms of getting things to work. So if there's any issues, the camera is not the same. I know that. Please be patient. It will hopefully be resolved for the next podcast. But if you guys did enjoy this podcast, hit the like, comment your thoughts below. Let us know who your man of the match was. Personally, I'm going to go with Ollie Watkins. I don't know about you, Dan. I just thought he was brilliant today.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Ali deserves all the plaudits. But I think, unfortunately, I'm gonna jump on the tie bandwagon. I don't think either of us can be too aggrieved with the other's answer there, can we?
No, of course not. It's a solid shout, mate. It's a solid shout. So yeah, guys, let us know who your man of the match is in the comments down below. And of course, subscribe if you're not already, so you never miss a podcast or video. Up the Villa.